Blog Talk Radio.
Batten down the hatches, ladies and gentlemen, across this great country. No, it's not coronavirus that's keeping you in. It's the American Sports Podcast, hosted by my good friend Peter Ray, live from Cleveland. Yours truly, Mark Mancini, producing this thing. 347-205-9631. 30 minutes goes by quick, so we got to just pretty much try to take the questions and answers to this thing. You can catch the archive version on blogtalkradio.com/Mancini Sports. Podcast platforms powered now by Mancini Media. And, boy, a lot of things have been happening, and we're just so blessed with the Zoom thing coming here and the StreamYard. A lot of ways we can get this message out to you. And we're just so honored that you keep listening each and every week. So without further ado, less of me, more of these guys. And let me lay the red carpet down, put the podium in its place, hand off the mic. Peter, first of all, how are you? Second of all, how can people get a hold of you? Third of all, you hit the slot machine in Vegas tonight with your guest.
Hi, Mark. I'm doing well, and I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. Ray, R-E-A. I have a website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray at peterjray.com. You're absolutely right about our guest tonight. He has ancestral roots in Mexico, but deep roots in the United States. He's a proud native of the Hoosier state of Indiana, longtime mental health professional, clinical therapist. He's been involved with baseball for a long time, and he's done some coaching, and he's came out with a book in recent years or recent times, The Intangibles, a guide to evaluating the non-physical side of the game of baseball. And he remembers, I believe, the 1959 White Sox, who I think were the only White Sox team between 1919 and 2005 to make it to the World Series. And he's a really good guy. We talked on the phone. Wonderful human being, very kind, and gives me a lot of hope and inspiration for the mental health field, considering how much depression there is and mental illness that a guy like this is in the field. Welcome to the show, Senor Mel Velasquez.
Well, muchas gracias. Thank you, Peter. You're right. I'm a proud American of Mexican heritage, but I never forget I live in the greatest country in the world. So, my father was in the 101st Airborne. My uncle was truly, I think I'm going to write a book about this, truly a hero in the Korean War. And I have a brother and a cousin that served in the Air Force and 3 uncles. So I'm proud to be an American. But I'm also very proud of my heritage. But I know this is the greatest country in the world.
Now, it just comes to mind the Mexican War. What are your thoughts? I hate to put you on the spot here, but the Mexican War, I think, was like in the 1840s. It added 38% to the continental United States. Do you have any thoughts on that, on the Mexican War?
Well, history is history, and you know quite a bit about history. Things happen. You know what I mean? The way I feel about it is they settled that. I deal more with the present, but I don't forget the past, and I don't tear down the past. And there were some good things that came out of it. One, I always laugh. I said, we didn't immigrate any place. My grandparents went to sleep speaking Spanish in Mexico, and they woke up the next morning speaking English in Texas. All they did was draw a line around their house. They didn't have to move any place. So, it's what happened. In the Revolution in the early 1900s, my grandparents had to escape from there, and I wouldn't be in the States. Well, my father's family was already, like I said, Texans, but on my mother's side, they came across in the early 1900s, and they had to escape, the Pancho Villa stuff. But and then my home, my grandparents' home, is considered a national site, national historic site. Half of their house is actually part of a museum where my aunt still lives and my cousins. So, I've got an interesting background. And, I laughed the other day. The other day was National Chili Day. So I said, what do you get when you mix a Mexican with a Texan? The best chili in the world.
Now, before we leave this topic, so you had apparently ancestors highly placed in the Mexican government. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, at one time.
Were they like cabinet members, or were they in the Congress, or do you know what exactly they were doing in the Mexican government?
No, I don't know. I should do some research on it. I don't know exactly what they did, but they were like, mayor or constable or something of their town, Salvatierra in Guanajuato, Mexico. And so they were pretty prominent in their town. I think they were prominent business people where they owned half the town, and it rubbed off on my cousins. One of them is an oncologist, a great doctor, and the other one's an international stockbroker. So they had some talent in that family, I tell you. It's my family.
Yeah,
I don't know I don't know his exact position, though.
My wife is from the Philippines, and I tell our son to be proud of his American background and Philippine background. And I think I agree with you. The United States is a great, great country, and a very not perfect, but we're not living in a perfect world, but generally a good country and a positive force. But I think all the countries of the world have their contribution to make, and we should see good in all of them, and see the good in all countries. Now, let's move on to your career has been in the mental health field. Can you talk about your career as a clinical therapist and in the mental health field?
Oh, sure. I went to school at Purdue University. I graduated in 1980 with a master's degree in counseling. And so I used that to get my first job after graduating in Gary, Indiana, as a clinical therapist. And I did that for 3 years, and I got an opportunity to go over to Tri-City Mental Health in East Chicago, Indiana, which is my hometown. And I got an opportunity to design and develop a program. And what I developed was a community support program for the chronically, persistently ill mental patients with mental illness, and that program won the Governor's Showcase Award. And from that, I parlayed that going into Chicago, and I eventually worked my way into being chief of mental health in the city of Chicago, where I ran 19 clinics under three mayoral administrations, starting with Harold Washington, who was a great mayor. I mean, a great mayor. But I also worked for Eugene Sawyer and then the young Daley, not the old boss, but the young Daley. So it was quite an experience. But then I moved on from that in 2000 when we moved to Vegas. I moved into teaching at the college university level. I was teaching psychology and sociology. So I have a pretty broad, extensive background in the mental health field.
And you said you're in charge. You're the top guy in mental health for the city of Chicago?
Yeah, that was exciting. That
wow.
was exciting. Well, one of the benefits is that I got a float for any parade that I wanted, so that was always fun. But I did. I ran 19 clinics. I managed a $16 million budget and about 250 personnel. And most of them were clinical therapists, psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, and then, support staff. So it was fun. It was exciting. I got to know the city real well because I had clinics all over the place. I had them on the Magnificent Mile and in Cabrini Green. So, I had to go every place. And it was exciting. Have
you seen the mental health field change since over the years as your life has progressed?
Yeah, it seems to be. It seems to be getting progressively worse. In identifying what is. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but some of these gender issues are kind of driving everybody crazy. We look at sports and allowing guys to just say I'm a girl, and then they run in a woman's track meet, and then they smoke everybody. So I've seen stuff like that. But traditionally, I've always seen problems with the mental health field. I'm getting myself in trouble because it's the area that I made a living in. But the problem is psychology and psychiatry are based on 5 basic perspectives. 4 out of the 5 don't believe we have a free will, behavior modification, neuroscience, that kind of stuff. They don't believe we have a free will. And the one that seems to believe we have a free will, the humanistic perspective, says we can become God through technology and intellect. And so, they don't go into that. Psychology doesn't go into the level of what I call the transcendent ego. I don't know if I'm getting too technical here, but where you have a connection to the supernatural, the spiritual, the divine, and going into that side of the personality. They go with the id and the ego, which are impulses and a sense of self and self-gratification. They say the super ego is like an opiate to the people. It's good to have, but it's just soothing. But they don't go into that next transcendent level where they actually study and consider God, and a relationship with God, and being holy, being virtuous, and this kind of stuff. So that's why I think there's some inherent problems there. I might write a book on that one of these days, but I allude to it in my book, but that's a whole topic in itself, and it's pretty deep.
It's such a fascinating and important topic, mental health, and so I, like I said, I was inspired that someone like you has been in this field for a long time, because to me it's so important for people to be kind and to care. I'm working at a place now where there's a guy I can tell he has mental illness, but he's the nicest guy in the world, and so I feel like he's not we need to see good in people, and there are people who are like, okay, they're mentally ill, maybe they can't work or whatever, but they might be wonderful people, and that needs to be recognized and encouraged, and respected.
Absolutely. I was taught by, there's a lot of people in the field that probably shouldn't be in the field, but then there are a lot of people in the field. And don't get me wrong, psychiatry and psychology has a lot of virtue to it. It's not, I just get upset or kind of perturbed a little bit with its limitations. They don't go far enough. But I was fortunate to get trained by some great psychiatrists and some great psychologists. And the first thing they taught me is in therapy was you don't have to say anything. A lot of these people have been isolated, and they haven't been communicating for a while, and they may be frightful. All you got to do is sit there, remain silent, and be in their presence, and be kind in their presence, and just wait. Let them talk. I've had initial sessions for 2 or 3 sessions where I may have said 5 words, before the person would start to open up, the person would start to feel comfortable. The person would see that I wouldn't run away or be afraid or reject them because they're having problems, So the first step, I think you're absolutely right, Peter. First step is you got to be kind and be tolerant. Sit in the presence of people. Ask them their name, too. A lot of times after they start getting better, they'll tell you about their experience. They would say stuff like, I feel like I'm invisible, like I was invisible, like nobody saw me. Nobody wanted to come around me. Nobody and it's that kind of stuff. So if you can share some space, share some kindness, share your presence of love and kindness, that's the first step to therapy. That's the first step to getting better. So,
When you had those times with people there was no talking going on, did you make eye contact with them?
Yeah, but I was careful. Yeah, you had to be careful with your spacing. You had to be careful with your eye contact. You had to be careful with your movements, because there's some hallucinations going on possibly, where they're seeing things and feeling things. There's some paranoia going on. Unfortunately, I saw a good friend of mine who's a great therapist. We were doing an exit interview with one of our clients who we thought was ready to leave the hospital, ready to go home. And he sat next to him, was talking, and he leaned toward him, and the guy jumped up and broke his nose, just hit him in the nose. And Emmanuel was such a good guy. He says, you know what, that was my fault. That was my fault. I invaded his space. I didn't use my good clinical sense. And he had a history of being paranoid, and he leaned into that zone that scared the heck out of the guy. You know, the guy wasn't aggressive, he was reactive. That takes some skill and some training and that kind of stuff, But, yeah, when you're in with somebody that's silent, you do want to make some eye contact, so you let them know they're there, you're there. You want to be careful of touching somebody, coming close to somebody, respectful of their space. But in time, they get used to your presence, and that's when the trust starts to build. See, the initial point is you have respect. You show them you respect them, but you maintain your own respect. The second step is then you start building the trust, and then the third step, they start feeling the love and the care. And that's how you establish a relationship. I actually gave a presentation in D.C. a long time ago in the 80s about that, on how to establish a relationship. Respect, trust, and care. You don't have those, you really don't have a relationship.
You mentioned God earlier, and I think I agree with you completely about respect and how you see a lack of respect often in general with people, with the way they interact with others, and it's a real problem. I don't know. I'm not sure how many people realize that, and then you ask yourself, well, why should we respect each other? And that's why I think it comes back to God, because if you believe that God does exist and that we are all His children, every human being is a child of God, created by God. Therefore, they deserve respect. Now, if you take God out, we live in kind of an atheistic world, an ignorant world, where people don't really believe in God. Then they think, well, no, I don't believe. We don't need to respect. Like for whatever reasons, maybe they'll think poor people don't deserve respect, or this ethnicity, or this race, or whatever, or gender, or age, or whatever. So that's why I think it's so important. I'm glad you brought that up. Is that this is how, because you see this in people who think some rich people who think, oh, the poor are, they're worthless,
right.
or people in the mental health field who think, mentally ill people, they're losers, something like
Absolutely. that. Absolutely. You take God out of the formula for most people, and I'd say 99%. Once in a while you get a person that's an atheist that's just a kind heart. But most of the time, you take God out of the formula, you're starting to deal with dominance and position and profit and perversion and all this stuff where people become objects. And you look at them as someone to use rather than someone to relate to. And so if you don't have that transcendent level of establishing a relationship with God, it's hard to establish a relationship with others, with a sense of love and respect and kindness and all that kind of stuff. And that's and we've got kind of a split world. You can see it. People that are just, they're all about dominance and control and how much they can make and what position and how much fame and even a lot of them leaning towards some sort of perversion too, which is unfortunate. But that's what happens when you don't have that foundation of a virtuous character and integrity and that type of stuff. It's sad.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the church I'm involved in, we believe that human beings are God's greatest creation, and then and therefore the greatest things in the world are human beings. But see, people, since we're so ignorant, people think of a beautiful house or a nice car or money, and they think that's what's great, or fame. But they think all these people, and we just, so we're really missing the point of life, and we're so ignorant when we mistreat each other, when we don't see, when we, judge others or whatever, or we just, we think, we don't see that. We just think, oh, people are worthless. And so it's just so ignorant, and that we value things that really aren't great, because a house was made by man, but a human being was made by God. So the human being is greater than the house, or greater than any man-created thing, any building or all the money. So but that's just the nature of the world today, and the ignorance we're living in. Hopefully, COVID, what we're going through with this COVID drama and war on destruction of life itself, this will lead to people developing some wisdom, because that's the real. People are just so ignorant and don't even know it.
Well, I'm not totally down on mankind. I think there's so many beautiful people and so much goodness in this world, and a lot of God-loving people, God-fearing people, God-loving people. So I think that's good. Sometimes something like COVID, where you're isolated and you're kind of, just faced with yourself, and you can't get out. You don't have the job. You don't have the income. You don't, you turn to God and you find God. You know what I mean? Sometimes you find God in the most difficult situations. So in that sense, that helps people. But I think in general, even when times are good, we still have a lot of good people, a lot of great people. What I'm disappointed in is our leadership. That's disappointing. The more I see, the greed and everything else that follows with it is kind of sad right now. But it's going to turn around. I have faith. I have hope. I don't walk in fear. I walk in faith. So I believe things are going to turn around.
Oh yeah, I agree. And to me, the greatest reality is that God does exist, and this world is His drama, and everything's going to be okay. Well, because we are all loved by this very powerful being, very benevolent being, very loving and patient and humble, and like any father wants his children to be happy, and he wants the best for us, and so things, but if you take that away, we're in big trouble. But with God, and with a strong sense of God's reality and His love for us, that if you love, so that there's nothing better than being loved by God. We are loved. We were not abandoned, and we're all linked together as children of God. So I feel that everything is okay, no matter how things can get bad, but no matter what happens, it's all going to be okay.
I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%. I think in talking to you before, I've mentioned that right now I just put together a course that I'm going to put online. I haven't posted it yet, but I'm going to put it online on building character and developing integrity, because I think we've had a generation that has kind of missed that. Not every child. The best time to teach those principles are 7 through 12. That's the age of reason, the age of logic. And so I put together a course online on building character and developing integrity for coaches of youth sports. And I'm going to be posting that in the next week or two. But I think right now, conceivably, it may be the most important time to start teaching our youth again about character and integrity. For all the reasons we're talking about.
I agree with you. I think the most important thing in life is to be a good person, and it seems like people have gotten so busy, and let's face it, the desire for wealth is such a strong, wealth, fame, and power. Those three things are so strong, and then just worldly, and then we miss, if we miss working and thinking for ourselves and being better examples for children and understanding that, then, we really miss the point of life, I think.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. If you go into 12, 13 years old on into adulthood, and your foundation is based on material wealth and material goods and what you can gain and what you can do, as opposed to virtuous character in living a life of integrity, being honest, being accountable, being congruent with who you are, being true, not a phony, being genuine. If you go with those principles as a 12-year-old, you start to live that out, you're going to be a virtuous person. But a lot of kids aren't being taught, what are virtuous attributes and virtuous principles. We got to teach that. We got to teach that.
You have written a book, The Intangibles, a guide to evaluating the non-physical side of the game of baseball. Did that come out this year? What year did it come out?
It came out 2018, so it's recent, but it's not like, this past year.
Can you talk about that book?
Yeah. First of all, let me tell you how I got inspired to write this book. A couple things. After I graduated from high school, I went on playing baseball, not at the professional level, but at the industrial level with, amateur leagues, Latin leagues, some college leagues, and that kind of stuff. And I played against some really tough competition, some really good ball players. I was pretty good myself, to tell you the truth. But I played against guys, and I would look at them, and they would have size, they'd have speed, they'd have velocity, they'd have power, everything you want. And then they'd wear the best gear, and they knew the game inside out, and they loved the game, yet they weren't in the pros. And I'd look at them, and I'd say, why are you playing next to me here instead of playing in Fenway Park or Yankee Stadium or Wrigley Field or something? Why these guys look like pros, but they're not there. And it started to dawn on me, it was the intangibles. So I kind of parked that in my unconscious and just kind of left it there. And then I fast-forwarded to when I started coaching high school baseball in about 2010, and I was coaching here in Las Vegas. And I was coaching. We had a conference. Las Vegas was such a hotbed, especially at that time. Every week I was coaching against a pro prospect, real pro, Chris Bryant, with the Cubs. Bryce Harper was on the other side of town. Joey Gallo was playing. Who else? Nick Hingham, the pitch with the Pirates. Aaron Blair, the pitch with the Braves. All these guys were playing in the conference I was coaching against. We had some good ball players, but we didn't have that kind of depth. And, I'm not even talking about D1 players. So the point is, though, there were college recruiters and pro scouts just all over the place. So I got to pick their brains as a high school coach. And I would ask them, I said, I have an idea of what you want to look at as far as physical attributes and their numbers, their metrics and their BA and the ERA and all that stuff. And I said, but what are you looking for, the non-physical side of the game? And I started collecting my thoughts, and I started seeing where's the common theme. And then also I started looking at some major league scouting reports, the Mariners, the Twins, a couple others. And I started looking, and I saw there were about 10 major themes. And that's how I got the topics for my book. I started recording that, and I started writing about it around 2016 when I started writing the book, and then I completed it in 2018.
Well, that's tremendous, just amazing, wonderful. And it's I find it. I'm just so happy to meet you or to talk with you on the phone and now have you on. It's it does, whenever you meet somebody, you meet a really good person, it does increase your faith in humanity or belief. And I know there is that goodness in human beings because we're created by God. I heard a guy say that every time he watches The Godfather, his faith in humanity is diminished. So I figure it's not a good idea to watch The Godfather.
Well, it's kind of good to see what not to do in some cases. But, they do have a good sense of family in The Godfather. So there's always virtue in something. There's always virtue in something.
Right. We're out of time. Our guest has been Mr. Mel Velasquez, the author of The Intangibles, a guide to evaluating the non-physical side of the game of baseball. Do you have any final words for our audience, Mr. Mel Velasquez?
Well, first of all, it's been a pleasure want to give a connection as to where to find my book, go to theintangiblesbook.com. I've got topics such as instinct and confidence and toughness and leadership, character, and integrity. So take a look at it. It'll help you evaluate talent, give a full picture, not just the numbers and the metrics or the physical attributes, but also, what do people look like? So as a total picture, what do players look like? And I'll leave with this. Yogi Berra said the game is 90% mental. Of course, he said the other half is physical. but still, the mental side is still way ahead of the physical. So, I'm hoping if you're a player, if you're a coach, if you're a parent, if you're in the game somehow, take a look at it. I think you'd appreciate it. And then, just send me an email or something or a text, and I'd be glad to answer you.
Our guest has been Mr. Mel Velasquez. Really wonderful having you on the show, and God bless you. Keep up the good work.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Peter. Thanks a lot.
Really, really something. Oh, wow. Tremendous. Our guest next week will be Perry Barber, who is a female umpire, and that'll be a good program as well. Dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. God bless you, Mr. Velasquez. Vaya con Dios.
Oh, gracias. Igualmente. Tú también. Okay.
Very good.